Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I speak on behalf of the WTO members of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, and I take this opportunity to extend birthday greetings to our Director General. I did so earlier today in my personal capacity, but I do so now in my capacity as Chair of the OECS member states. And also I'm extending birthday greetings to my ministerial colleague from India. First, allow me to recognize the Herculean efforts of Ambassador Dacio Castillo of Honduras for his commitment to this process, including the fair and balanced posture which he adopted throughout his role as facilitator for the pandemic response. We also recognize the efforts of Dr. Lassana Jibre of Sierra Leone, Chair of the TRIPS Council, the Director General and her team who facilitated the Quad process at the political level, and all other efforts towards an intellectual property outcome. The COVID-19 pandemic not only placed immense pressure on the already strained health systems of the OECS, but it also induced severe economic pain and socio-economic dislocation in our economies. In 2020 alone, the pandemic resulted in lost GDP for the OECS of US $1.2 billion, a significant figure for such small states. It also resulted in about $800 billion in lost exports of goods, and given the impact on our tourism, figures for lost services trade are even more telling. The impact on our food security and decoupling from global supply chains were also deleterious on our economies. Of course, we cannot ignore the impact of the pandemic on the lives lost. All these things could have been mitigated had we shown restraint with respect to export restrictions, vaccine nationalism, and other measures taken by members throughout the life of the pandemic. Chair, we can never allow our approach to date to happen again. Already it is clear that as global policymakers, history will judge us harshly given our collective failure with respect to the pandemic. Before I close, the OECS also wants to place on record its immense gratitude to the COVAX facility and bilateral donors, such as the governments and peoples of India, the United States of America, the United Kingdom, Canada, Argentina, and Mexico for their donations of vaccines to our various member states. In some instances, we were able to share vaccines with other Caribbean countries. And in this regard, we must mention the invaluable contributions from Barbados, Dominica, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines to fellow Caribbean states. Mr. Chair, we practiced what we preached as it relates to vaccine access and equity. In a sign of cross-Atlantic cooperation as part of the wider CARICOM grouping, we also joined the African Union's vaccine procurement platform. This underscores the need to have addressed in the TRIPS waiver the ability of members to re-export. Particularly on the waiver, the OECS has an interest in ensuring that for the current and future pandemics, we are able to access vaccines and other supplies in an equitable manner. On the pandemic response, it was also important for us to encourage members to maintain the benefits of transparency that the multilateral trading system affords, and to take account of the impact of these kinds of crises on the economies and livelihoods of small island developing states. It is for this reason that the OECS lends its support to concrete outcomes on both the WTO response to the pandemic and the TRIPS waiver. I thank you, Mr. Chair.